Good evening. This side Rahul Magan here is a Group Chief Executive Officer, Treasury Consulting, and also a venture capitalist. As we speak, Treasury Consulting is a multinational headquartered group based out India, Singapore, and Hong Kong. More importantly, we are 100% cash-rich group and we operate our multinational hedge fund. But having said that, we are proprietary in nature. By proprietary, I mean no third party. I repeat, no third party can invest capital in our fund. Be it venture capitalist, private equity, or anyone. Now, today, Reserve Bank of India hiked the rate by 40 basis point, which to me is completely unwarranted. By unwarranted, I mean that the way Reserve Bank was giving the justification and thanks to the inflation, I completely disregard that. Because history is witness that India is facing double-digit inflation since the last several years. That's a separate thing that the media never reports that because we are using WPI, Wholesale Price Index, as a benchmark while the Western world is computing inflation using top techniques like HIPS and deflators. By the way, I'm sure 99% of you never heard about deflator. So there is no point talking about deflator. So RBI excuse of hiking the rate by 40 bips is one of the highest stupidities. And inflation cannot be tamed by hiking the rates. This is not a demand side inflation. This is a supply side inflation. And supply side inflation cannot be tamed by hiking the rates. So once again, RBI did another stupidity and the whole economy would pay the price. I'm telling you, this hike of 40 basis point plus the CRR, which means consuming the banking funds free of cost, because common sense, CRR do not have any interest rates. Now banks needs to pay 50 basis more. It means on every 100 rupee, they would be paying 50 cents more on every 100 rupee. So this money will not yield anything and banks would be hiking the rates to compensate themselves. Common sense, banks needs to compensate themselves. Bank left with no other option. It's a common sense. You cannot run away from that fact. Now this would have a devastating impact on Nifty and Bank Nifty also. How? Because first let's start with Bank Nifty. In Bank Nifty, the asset liability management, I repeat, asset liability management of the banks would be on the toes. Because all the floating rates which bank issued would now increase. More than 40 bips. And this would trigger a wave of non-performing assets in the system. Because the small and medium-term enterprises who raised this funding from the banks won't be able to have another 0.5% in their books. And of course, It would be more than 0.5% because you need to adjust the impact of CRR also, because CRR is a sunk asset. It would be more than 0.5% to be precise and honest. But that's a separate thing that the corrupt and the compromised media of India will never reflect that. That's a clear fact. Now, having said that, we also need to understand one important thing. Once it would trigger ALM, which stands for Asset and Liability Management, mismatch in the books of banks, the Bank Nifty would fall. No one can stop Bank Nifty from falling, except Hindi media. And I'm not saying that any bank would get spared. No bank would get spared. Just like I say that if you're having a deposit of 100 rupees, you will have an impact of 50 cents. So HDFC Bank would have X impact, ICICI Bank would have Y impact, Axis Bank would have Z impact, SBI would have P impact. All impacts would be different. No doubt about that. But having said that, the biggest the deposit base, the biggest the impact would be. And the biggest would be the ALM mismatch. That's a separate thing that the annual reports of Indian banks, I repeat, annual reports of Indian banks never discuss ALM mismatch. Not at all. So Bank Nifty will fall. Another problem is the Federal Reserve. Today, Federal Reserve hiked by 50 bips as expected. And I'm consistently saying on the social media, it is the beginning of the crash of the US dollar. And to me, the like, the counts, the views, the subscriber, and all these are immaterial because I chase knowledge, not these things. Now the beginning of US dollar crash has started by 50 bips increase, and Powell, who is the head of Federal Reserve, made it clear today that in the upcoming two meetings, which is June and July, another 50 bips impact on the cards. Now, since the US dollar rates are rising, in that sense, the FII, who are already a net seller, would sell more aggressively in India. Because common sense, you are getting more interest rate outside India than getting inside India. And if RBI will hike the rate to compensate that, because if Fed hiked, RBI hike, if RBI hike the rate to compensate that, then in that eventuality, the economy will move towards bankruptcy. Henceforth, it would be a trilemma. So all investors needs to be very, very careful. Because one side, Federal Reserve made it clear that in the upcoming two meetings, 50 bips each hike is possible, but 75 bips is little unrealistic as per Powell. So if after two meetings, I get 50 more, 50 today, which is 1.5% plus 0.5 already, which is near about 2%, then I love to invest my money in US because the dollar convertible rate would be very low in India. This would definitely trigger the FII outflows. And since it would trigger FII outflows, you know what I mean. So guys, please be careful and alert. Don't do any stupidity now. Don't do. I'm not giving any specific Nifty or Bank Nifty target because I have stopped doing this. But having said that, please be careful. The time ahead might not be an easy time. And especially in the IT sector, if FII start huge selling, which by the way they are doing, then Indian IT sector would bear the brunt of that.